The Los Angeles sun painted long shadows across Allison Carter's apartment as she stared at her phone, heart racing. Entertainment Weekly had just posted another article about her relationship with Ryan Maxwell, Hollywood's newest acclaimed director. The headline screamed, "Rising star and visionary director, Hollywood's hottest new power couple." 3 months ago, she'd been just another struggling actress, burning through her savings while chasing auditions. Now, she was being photographed at premiere events, featured in magazines, and fielding calls from agents who wouldn't have given her the time of day last year. The whirlwind romance with Ryan had changed everything. They'd met at an industry party where she'd been working as a waitress. Ryan had approached her with that disarming smile of his, the one that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "You're too beautiful to be serving drinks," he'd said, taking a champagne flute from her tray. "You should be in front of my camera instead." She'd heard lines like that before, but something about Ryan felt different. Maybe it was the intensity in his gaze when she spoke about her dreams, or how he actually listened instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Sophie, her best friend and roommate, walked into the living room, coffee mug in hand. "Another article about you and lover boy?" she asked, peering over Allison's shoulder. "They're calling us a power couple now," Allison said, still struggling to believe it. "Can you imagine? Me, a power couple?" Sophie's expression flickered with something, concern. Before settling into a smile. "Just remember who you are, Al. All this attention, it can change people." "I'm still me," Allison assured her, but even as she said it, she felt the subtle shift in her reality. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from new friends in the industry. Designers sent her clothes. Restaurants comped their meals. It was intoxicating. Ryan had promised her a role in his upcoming film, a dark psychological thriller that was already generating buzz. "You have raw talent," he'd told her, tracing her jawline with his finger. "The camera will love you." But lately, something felt off. Small things. The way Ryan's publicist always seemed to know where they'd be dining. How photographers materialized whenever they had a supposedly private moment. The whispers she caught at parties, quickly silenced when she approached. That evening, at another industry event, Allison stood by the bar, watching Ryan work the room. He moved with practiced ease, each gesture calculated for maximum effect. She'd seen him direct scenes with the same precision. "He's good, isn't he?" a woman's voice said beside her. Allison turned to see Patricia Wells, a veteran producer known for her sharp tongue and sharper instincts. "Sorry, Ryan. He knows exactly how to play the game." Patricia sipped her martini, eyes narrowed. "Though I have to say, this is one of his better performances. The whole, discovering new talent angle? Brilliant. The press is eating it up." Something cold settled in Allison's stomach. "What do you mean, performance?" Patricia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Oh honey, you didn't think." "Well, I suppose that's what makes it work so well. The authenticity." She patted Allison's arm. "Just enjoy the ride while it lasts. And maybe start looking for a good publicist of your own. You'll need one when." She trailed off as Ryan approached, his smile dazzling. "There's my star," he said, wrapping an arm around Allison's waist. "Patricia, always a pleasure. I hope you're not filling my girlfriend's head with industry horror stories." Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. "Just giving some friendly advice. We girls have to look out for each other, don't we?" As Patricia walked away, Allison felt Ryan's arm tighten almost imperceptibly around her waist. "Don't let her get to you," he whispered in her ear. "She's bitter about how the industry's changing. The old guard always is." Allison nodded, but Patricia's words had opened a crack in her perfect fairy tale. That night, as she lay awake in her apartment, Ryan had a meeting to attend. She scrolled through their relationship timeline in the press. Each article was perfectly crafted, each photo opportunity exquisitely timed. It all seemed so orchestrated. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, "Big news tomorrow. Wear the blue dress I sent you. The one that photographs well." Allison stared at the message, remembering Patricia's words, "Just enjoy the ride while it lasts." For the first time since their whirlwind romance began, she wondered exactly when, and how, the ride would end. The blue dress felt like armor against Allison's skin, each carefully chosen fold and seam designed to catch the light, to create the perfect silhouette for cameras. As she stood in the corner of Ryan's sprawling Hollywood Hills home, watching guests mill about with champagne flutes, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on set, playing a role she hadn't fully understood when she accepted the part. The party buzzed with industry elite, producers, executives, critics, all gathered for what Ryan had cryptically called a special announcement. She caught fragments of conversations about box office projections, marketing strategies, audience demographics. The business of dreams, packaged and sold to the highest bidder. "You look lost in thought," Sophie whispered, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. She'd insisted on coming tonight, claiming she needed to support her best friend's big moment. Now, Allison was grateful for her steady presence. "Something feels wrong," Allison admitted, taking a sip. "Like I'm part of someone else's story." Sophie's response was cut short by the arrival of Marcus Chen, Ryan's producer and closest confidant. "Ryan's looking for you," he said, his expression unreadable. "He's in his study." The study had always been Ryan's sanctuary, off-limits even to her. As she approached, she heard voices through the partially open door. She paused, her hand hovering over the handle. "The timing is perfect," Ryan was saying, his voice carrying that familiar tone of calculated enthusiasm. "The scandal will break just as we start principal photography. The press won't be able to resist, the betrayed ingenue, the ambitious director. It'll generate exactly the kind of controversy we need." "And you're sure she doesn't suspect?" Marcus asked. Ryan's laugh sent ice through Allison's veins. "Please. She's so grateful to be here, she sees what she wants to see. That's what makes it work, her authenticity. You can't fake that kind of genuine emotion. When the story breaks about the affair with Jessica, her reaction will be pure gold." "Scandals sell better than talent these days," Marcus mused. "Still, it seems cold, even for you." "It's business," Ryan replied. "Besides, she'll get something out of it too. 6 months from now, everyone will know her name. That's more than most actresses get in years of auditions." Allison stepped back, her heart thundering in her chest. The champagne glass slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. "Allison?" Ryan's voice called out. "Is that you?" She turned and ran, pushing past confused party guests, ignoring the whispers and stares. Sophie caught her arm near the entrance. "Al? What happened?" "I can't. I need to." The words wouldn't come. How could she explain that her fairy tale had just revealed itself as an elaborately constructed lie? "Let me drive you home," Sophie said firmly, reading the devastation on her face. Later, curled up on her couch, Allison stared at her phone. 17 missed calls from Ryan. Dozens of messages. Each one carefully crafted, she realized now. Each word chosen for maximum emotional impact. It was all fake, she whispered to Sophie, who hadn't left her side. Every moment, every kiss, every promise. "I'm just content. Something to drive engagement and generate buzz for his movie." "What are you going to do?" Allison closed her eyes, remembering the countless auditions where she'd poured her heart out only to be told she wasn't quite what they were looking for. The years of waiting tables, of practicing lines in front of her bathroom mirror, of believing that talent and dedication would eventually open doors. They want authentic emotion. Her voice hardened with resolve. Fine. Let's give them a performance they'll never forget. Her phone buzzed again, Ryan's publicist, probably already drafting statements, planning how to spin this. Allison let it ring. For the first time since their relationship began, she felt fully awake, fully present. The script had been ripped away, leaving her face to face with a decision: continue playing the role Ryan had written for her, or start writing her own story. She picked up her laptop and began to type, documenting everything, every calculated public appearance, every spontaneous photo opportunity, every whispered conversation she'd overheard. The truth would make one hell of a story. But first, she needed to understand the game better than the people who thought they were playing her. Sophie, she said quietly, remember that independent film director you introduced me to last month? The one working on that psychological drama about manipulation and power? Call him. Tell him I think I've found my breakthrough role. The irony wasn't lost on her, using Ryan's own tactics against him. But sometimes, she realized, the only way to break free from a script was to rewrite it entirely. Dawn crept through Allison's apartment window, painting shadows across the scattered remnants of her relationship with Ryan, designer dresses he'd chosen for photo opportunities, scripts annotated with his suggestions, carefully staged photographs that now felt like evidence rather than memories. She hadn't slept, spending the night instead examining every moment of their time together through this new, harsh light of understanding. Her phone lay silent now, Ryan's messages having tapered off around 3 a.m. The last one read, "Let's talk about this professionally. We both have a lot to lose." The word professionally struck her like a slap. Even now, he was treating their relationship like a business transaction. Sophie emerged from the kitchen with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You should eat something," she said, setting one cup down beside Allison. "You can't think clearly on an empty stomach." "I can't stop thinking about all the signs I missed," Allison said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "The way he always positioned us just so when we were in public. How he'd rehearse conversations with me before industry events, suggesting better ways to tell our story. I thought he was protecting me, teaching me. But he was directing me, wasn't he? Like I was just another actor in his production." "He's good at what he does," Sophie acknowledged, settling beside her on the couch. "Making people see what he wants them to see. But that doesn't make you naive for believing him." Allison stood, walking to the window. Below, Los Angeles was waking up, people rushing to auditions, meetings, shoots, all chasing their own versions of the dream that had brought her here. "The worst part is, I'm starting to doubt everything. My talent, my judgment, whether I deserve to be here at all." "That's exactly what he wants," Sophie said firmly. "When people like Ryan manipulate others, they don't just take advantage of weakness, they create it. They make you doubt yourself so you'll be grateful for their guidance." The words hit home, unlocking something in Allison's chest. She thought about the auditions she'd been nailing before meeting Ryan, the student films that had won festival awards, the years of training that had brought her to Los Angeles in the first place. None of that had been his doing. Her phone buzzed, a message from David Chen, the independent director Sophie had mentioned. "Heard you might be interested in my project. The role's challenging, a woman discovering her own power after being manipulated by someone she trusted. Sound familiar?" A laugh bubbled up in Allison's throat, surprising her with its genuineness. "Life imitating art," she murmured. "Or art imitating life," Sophie suggested. "Either way, it's a chance to tell your story on your terms." Allison opened her laptop, pulling up the notes she'd made during her sleepless night. "Not just my story," she said quietly. "I've been getting messages from other actresses. Apparently, I'm not the first person Ryan has used as a publicity stunt. Just the first one who might be able to prove it." She began typing again, but this time not from a place of anger or revenge. Each word felt like reclaiming a piece of herself, transforming pain into purpose. The story taking shape wasn't just about exposing Ryan, it was about the power of authenticity in an industry built on carefully constructed illusions. A text from Ryan's publicist appeared: "We're preparing to announce your breakup. We can position you sympathetically if you're willing to work with us on the narrative." Allison felt a strange calm settle over her. They still thought they were writing this story. They've never seen me actually act, she realized. Everything so far has been real, my love, my pain, my disillusionment. But now I'm going to give the performance of my life. Sophie raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Ryan wants to use a scandal to promote his film. Fine. But first, I'm going to learn everything I can about how he operates. Every tactic, every manipulation, every carefully orchestrated, spontaneous moment. And then I'm going to turn his own game against him. She paused, remembering Patricia's words at the party: "Just enjoy the ride while it lasts." Perhaps Patricia had been trying to warn her, in her own way. The industry was built on stories, the only question was who got to tell them. "I need to make some calls," Allison said, reaching for her phone. "Starting with that camera operator who kept trying to warn me about Ryan's pattern with actresses." What was her name? Jessica. The same Jessica, she realized, who was supposed to be part of Ryan's planned scandal. The pieces were there, she just needed to understand how they fit together. And this time, she wouldn't be playing a role in someone else's story. She would be the author of her own. The morning light filtered through the windows of David Chen's modest production office in Silver Lake, so different from Ryan's sleek Hollywood Hills compound. Allison sat across from David, watching him review her screen test for his independent film. The role was complex, a woman discovering her voice after years of silence, and Allison had poured every ounce of her recent experience into the performance. David paused the footage, his expression thoughtful. "There's something different about you now," he observed. "A depth that wasn't there when we first met. You're not just playing the character, you're finding her truth in your own experience." Allison nodded, feeling the weight of the past few weeks settling around her shoulders. The industry blogs were buzzing with speculation about her conspicuous absence from Ryan's recent public appearances. His publicist had been floating trial balloons about trouble in paradise, testing different narratives to see which gained the most traction. "I've spent so much time lately thinking about authenticity," she said, choosing her words carefully. "In this industry, everyone talks about truth in performance, but we're all playing roles, aren't we? Even off camera." David leaned back in his chair. "The best performances come from understanding the difference between playing a role and losing yourself in someone else's story. You've learned that the hard way, haven't you?" Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Jessica, the camera operator who'd worked on several of Ryan's previous films. They'd met for coffee the day before, and Jessica had shared stories that confirmed Allison's suspicions about Ryan's pattern of using and discarding young actresses for publicity. "Another piece falls into place?" David asked, noting her expression. "Ryan's whole career is built on carefully constructed narratives," Allison explained. "He doesn't just direct films, he directs reality itself. Every relationship, every scandal, every career trajectory, they're all just scenes in his ongoing production." She pulled out her notebook, filled with meticulously documented patterns she'd discovered. Ryan's previous muses who'd mysteriously fallen from grace just as his films were releasing. The convenient scandals that always seemed to generate maximum publicity. The way he positioned himself as a champion of new talent while systematically undermining the very women he claimed to support. "The irony," she continued, "is that he taught me more about acting than he realized. I've learned how to smile for cameras while keeping my thoughts hidden, how to let people see what they expect to see while planning something entirely different." David studied her with growing interest. "And what are you planning?" "A performance," Allison replied, "but not the one he's expecting. He thinks I'll play the role of the betrayed ingenue, generate sympathy and scandal for his film. But I'm writing a different story." She opened her laptop, showing David the screenplay she'd been working on, a collaborative effort with some of Ryan's previous victims. It was raw, honest, and potentially explosive. Not just an exposé, but a deeper exploration of power, authenticity, and the price of dreams in an industry built on illusions. "This is why I need your help," she said. "Not just with the role in your film, but with understanding how to tell this story in a way that can't be dismissed or spun. Ryan's been directing this narrative for years. It's time for a new perspective." David was silent for a long moment, reading through her notes. "You realize what you're risking? Ryan has powerful friends. He'll try to paint you as bitter, unstable, opportunistic." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Allison said, a quiet confidence in her voice. "He'll follow his usual playbook because it's always worked before. But this time, the ending will be different." Her phone buzzed again, Ryan's publicist, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss the narrative moving forward. The old Allison would have felt anxiety at such a message. Now, she felt only a calm certainty. "You know what's fascinating about Ryan's approach to filmmaking?" she asked David. "He's so focused on controlling every detail, every angle, every reaction, that he forgets the most important element of any great story: truth. Real, messy, uncomfortable truth." She thought about the upcoming industry gala where Ryan planned to premiere footage from his new film. The event where, according to the whispers she'd heard, he intended to set his scandal in motion. He expected her to react, to play her part in his carefully orchestrated drama. "The thing about truth," she continued, pulling up the invitation on her phone, "is that it has a power all its own. Sometimes, the most impactful scene isn't the one that's carefully rehearsed and staged. It's the moment when someone goes off script and speaks from the heart." David nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're not just planning to expose him. You're going to make him face the one thing he can't control: authentic emotion in an uncontrolled environment." "Exactly," Allison said, feeling the pieces of her plan falling into place. "He wrote this story thinking I was a supporting character in his narrative. He never considered that I might be the protagonist of my own." The week before the industry gala unfolded like a sequence of carefully composed shots, each moment carrying weight beyond its surface. Allison spent her mornings rehearsing with David, diving deep into the role of a woman reclaiming her narrative. The parallels between character and reality blurred, each informing the other in ways that transformed her understanding of both. In her apartment, spread across her dining room table, lay the evidence of her evolution: journals documenting Ryan's manipulations, testimonies from other actresses, carefully archived text messages and emails. But more compelling than any physical evidence were the subtle shifts in her own perspective, the way she now saw through the carefully constructed facades of Hollywood power dynamics. "You're different," Sophie observed one evening, finding Allison reviewing footage from her earlier performances. "Not harder, exactly. Just more present." Allison paused the video, considering her friend's words. "I used to think success in this industry meant becoming whatever other people wanted me to be. Now I realize it's about becoming more authentically yourself, even when that makes others uncomfortable." Her phone lit up with a message from Jessica, who had become an unexpected ally. "Meeting set with Entertainment Weekly. They're interested in the bigger story, not just Ryan, but the whole system that enables people like him." The industry's machinery was already in motion. Ryan's publicist had leaked hints about relationship troubles to select media outlets. Blind items appeared on gossip sites suggesting creative differences and competing career priorities. The groundwork for their planned scandal was being laid with practiced precision. Allison walked to her window, watching the sun set over Los Angeles. The city looked different now, not a landscape of dreams and disappointments, but a complex ecosystem of stories, each one shaped by choices both seen and unseen. Her own story was still unfolding, but for the first time since arriving in LA, she felt fully present in its creation. She thought about the conversation she'd had with David earlier that day. "The most powerful moments in film," he'd said, are when characters stop reacting to the plot and start actively shaping it. That's what makes audiences lean forward in their seats, the moment when someone claims their own agency. Her preparation for the gala wasn't about memorizing lines or planning confrontations. It was about understanding the deeper truth of her experience, the way personal growth often emerged from life's most challenging redirections. Each piece of evidence she'd gathered was more than ammunition, it was part of a larger story about authenticity in an industry built on artifice. Patricia Wells had reached out unexpectedly, offering subtle support in her own way. "The industry remembers who tells the truth," she'd said over lunch. "Even when they pretend not to hear it at first." In her bedroom closet hung the dress she'd chosen for the gala, not one of Ryan's carefully selected outfits, but something that reflected who she'd become. Simple, elegant, confident. A choice made for herself rather than for the cameras. Sophie found her later that night, surrounded by research and notes. "Are you sure about this? Once you step onto this path." "I'm not doing this to destroy Ryan," Allison interrupted softly. "This isn't about revenge. It's about something more fundamental, the right to own your own story." She picked up a recent industry magazine, Ryan's face on the cover, his quotes about discovering and nurturing new talent prominently featured. The irony wasn't lost on her, how his greatest talent had been creating narratives that served his own interests while appearing to champion others. "You know what I realized," she continued, setting the magazine aside. "True power isn't about controlling the story. It's about having the courage to tell the truth, even when that truth doesn't fit into someone else's carefully constructed narrative." Her phone buzzed with another message from Ryan's team, final details about the gala, assumptions about her role in their planned publicity strategy. She let it go unanswered, focusing instead on her own preparation. The evidence was organized, her allies were in place, and her own understanding of the situation had evolved beyond simple categories of victim and villain. Tomorrow's gala would be more than just another Hollywood event. It would be the moment when carefully maintained illusions confronted uncomfortable truths, when one woman's decision to reclaim her narrative rippled through an industry built on managed perceptions. But tonight, in the quiet of her apartment, Allison felt a profound peace. The path ahead was uncertain, but her commitment to authentic self-expression had become unshakable. She wasn't just preparing for a confrontation, she was stepping fully into her own power, ready to tell a story that had been waiting to be told. The Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom glittered with the familiar facade of Hollywood glamour, crystal chandeliers catching light, champagne flutes clinking, careers being made and broken in whispered conversations. Allison stood at the entrance, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. The dress she'd chosen, a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, made her feel grounded, present in a way Ryan's carefully selected outfits never had. This wasn't just another industry event. It was the premiere of footage from Ryan's new film, the moment he'd planned to set his calculated scandal in motion. She could see him across the room, holding court among industry executives, his practiced charm on full display. Their eyes met briefly, and she recognized the slight tension in his smile, uncertainty bleeding through his usual confidence. "Ready?" Sophie whispered beside her, a steady presence in the swirling atmosphere of ambition and pretense. Allison touched the small thumb drive in her clutch, containing irrefutable evidence of Ryan's pattern of manipulation. But it wasn't just about exposed secrets anymore. It was about something far more fundamental, the moment when carefully constructed illusions confronted raw, unscripted truth. She moved through the crowd with deliberate grace, accepting greetings and navigating conversations with a new awareness. Each interaction felt different now that she saw through the carefully maintained veneer of Hollywood relationships. Patricia Wells caught her eye from across the room, raising her glass in subtle acknowledgement. The evening progressed according to its choreographed schedule. Speeches were made, deals were brokered in corner conversations, and then Ryan took the stage, his charisma filling the room as he prepared to introduce the preview footage of his film. "Tonight is about authenticity in storytelling," he began, his words carrying that familiar mix of sincerity and calculation. About finding truth in unexpected places. Allison felt a surge of clarity in that moment. This wasn't about revenge or even justice, it was about choosing to live authentically in a world built on carefully crafted performances. She stepped forward, her movement drawing attention in the quieted room. "You're right, Ryan," she said, her voice steady. "Let's talk about truth." The room stilled, hundreds of industry power players suddenly focused on this unscripted moment. Ryan's expression flickered, surprise, concern, calculation, before settling into a practiced smile. "Allison," he said smoothly, "I didn't realize you were planning to join me up here." "Neither did I, until this moment," she replied, climbing the steps to the stage. "But you've taught me so much about storytelling, about crafting narratives. It seems fitting to share what I've learned." She turned to face the audience, feeling the presence of every person who'd ever been used as a prop in someone else's story. "We talk about authenticity in this industry, but we package it, control it, reshape it until it fits our preferred narrative. I know, I've been part of that process. The carefully timed photos, the strategic relationship reveals, the planned controversies." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ryan shifted slightly, his director's instinct for control warring with the unpredictability of the moment. "But real storytelling," Allison continued, "isn't about control. It's about truth, messy, uncomfortable, transformative truth. And my truth is this: I came to Hollywood believing in the power of authentic performance, and I found myself performing authenticity instead." She reached for Ryan's hand, surprising him with the gesture. "You taught me more than you intended about the craft of storytelling. About how to use vulnerability as a tool, how to shape perception, how to make people see what you want them to see. But the most valuable lesson was one you didn't mean to teach: the difference between playing a role and living your truth." The thumb drive in her clutch remained unused. In this moment of unscripted authenticity, documented evidence seemed less powerful than naked truth. "I'm not here to expose secrets or assign blame," she said, addressing not just Ryan but the entire room. "I'm here to step out of a role I never agreed to play. To stop being a character in someone else's narrative and start being the author of my own story." She turned back to Ryan, seeing him clearly, not as a villain or manipulator, but as someone trapped in his own carefully constructed world of controlled narratives. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing me exactly who I don't want to become." The silence in the room was absolute as she descended the stage steps. No one moved to stop her as she walked toward the exit, head held high. Behind her, she could hear the whispers beginning, the story already taking shape in 100 different versions. But for the first time since arriving in Los Angeles, Allison wasn't concerned about how others would tell her story. She had found something more valuable than fame or revenge. She had found her voice, her truth, her way of being in a world of carefully crafted illusions. Outside, the Los Angeles night air felt clean and real. Sophie waited by the car, concern and pride mingling in her expression. "That wasn't the explosive confrontation they were expecting," she said as Allison approached. "No," Allison agreed, smiling. "It was something better, it was authentic." Her phone was already buzzing with messages, journalists seeking comments, industry players choosing sides, David confirming their morning meeting to discuss her role in his independent film. But those could wait. Tonight was about savoring the quiet triumph of choosing truth over performance, of finding strength not in revenge but in the simple act of being genuinely, unapologetically herself. The city lights stretched before her, no longer a landscape of dreams and disappointments, but a canvas for stories yet to be told, stories of truth, transformation, and the courage to remain authentic in a world of carefully constructed illusions.